Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Baker Institute at Rice University. I'm Edward Jeredjian, the founding director of the Baker Institute, and I just want to give you a very warm greeting this morning to this very important and timely and pertinent event where a town hall to discuss one of the most critical issues that our society faces nationally and internationally, the whole issue of countering terrorism and how to enhance homeland defense. I wish to commend the Council for Excellence in Government for organizing this forum and reaching out to citizens throughout the country. I understand that this is the fourth in a series of town hall meetings and part of this new critical initiative, Homeland Security from the citizens' perspective. We at the Baker Institute, a year and a half before 9/11, took the initiative, and I got to admit it was my wife's idea, not my idea. Secretary Baker, the honorary chair of this institute, calls her my main brain, but she said, you really should do something for the city of Houston in terms of terrorism because we have such a high profile here in terms of being the energy capital of the world, the refineries, the infrastructure, NASA, the medical center, et cetera. That we could perhaps give a second opinion like a doctor does to first response mechanisms. And indeed, we started that. And of course, with 9/11, we accelerated our efforts. And with Baylor College of Medicine and the Texas Medical Center dealing with bioterrorism, and we on first response mechanisms provided a report to the mayor of Houston, which gave some perspective on what needs to be done. And we've sat down with the new mayor, Bill White, and we are continuing that effort with him. I can't tell you what I learned in that experience, how critical it is for the cities and the counties, and Judge Eccles has been very much involved in this, to enhance our communications, our capacity, and our coordination on these issues. So I just want to welcome you, underscore the critical importance of this issue. I don't want to steal any of Pat McGinnis's thunder, but I got to say that this is the second time that the distinguished Asa Hutchinson is gracing our Baker Institute. He came here when he was, of course, the administrator of the Drug Enforcement Agency. He's a courageous man. We had him on a panel sitting next to a person who was advocating the legalization of marijuana. And I remember telling the audience at that time, if I smell a sniff of smoke in this room, this conference is being closed down. I know we don't have any terrorists in this room, so I'm not going to make the same statement. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce our moderator, Pat McGinnis, who will moderate this session. She is the president and CEO of the Nonprofit Council for Excellence in Government, an outstanding organization to enhance the performance of government at all levels and to increase citizen confidence and participation in governments. Their programs are very pertinent. I'm knowledgeable of them, and I know the good results that are obtained. Before coming to the council, Pat was co-founder and principal of the FMR Group, a public affairs consulting firm, where she concentrated on education, energy, and communications policy. And earlier, she was a member of the strategic planning government practices at Creasat McCormick and Padgett, an international management consulting firm. And in government, she served in the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, where critical decisions are made during the Carter administration, where she led the effort to create the Department of Education and held posts in the Senate Budget Committee and the Department of Commerce and Health. So join me in greeting Pat McGinnis, who will moderate the session. Pat.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador Jeredjian, for your warm welcome. It is really great to be in Houston on this Tuesday morning after the Super Bowl, safe and secure. And basking in the glow of a really good football game, thanks to a lot of work that was done behind the scenes. We are delighted to be here. The Baker Institute for Public Policy is the perfect setting. This beautiful hall is the perfect setting for this conversation about Homeland Security. And We will be turning to you. We are really great. It's great to have all of you in the hall. This is your conversation. You're the stars of this show. The idea is to hear your concerns, your suggestions, your ideas. This is Homeland Security from the citizen's perspective. I do want to say a special word of thanks to our corporate partners, American Management Systems. Donna Morea is on our panel from AMS. Also, we have Bill Mutel from Hewlett-Packard and Susie Henderson from SBC Communications and their colleagues. And I want to thank all of you, not only for making this possible, but for your great help in designing this town hall. I'd also like to thank our media partners, the Houston Chronicle, KPRC Channel 2, and very special thanks to KTRH News Radio, which is broadcasting this live so many more people can participate than are here in the room. We have a terrific panel. We're going to be talking to you, getting your ideas about Homeland Security. Let me say a word to follow up on the Ambassador's introduction about the Council for Excellence in Government. Our mission is excellence in government, and we have two goals that are very related. One is to help people in government improve performance, get important results for the American people, and the other is to encourage participation, encourage you to get into the act, to participate, not only as voters, but to help shape priorities and make these critical issues come to fruition, to achieve, in this case, the level of Homeland Security that you want and the right balance between security and freedom. This initiative is really, in a way, based on a road tour all around the country. To get the citizens' perspective, we are holding town halls in 6 different cities. We've been to St. Louis, Miami, San Diego, and we are delighted to be here in Houston. We're going on to Boston and to Seattle. And we will also be doing a national poll so we can test your ideas and concerns against those of the whole nation. So we're taking this information, and a group of experts, expert working groups, are forming their agenda. The issues that they're going to concentrate on are defined by you. And we will be coming up with some recommendations that will be made to federal, state, and local officials, also to the business community, to civic organizations, and we will also make some recommendations to you as citizens about what you can do to help prepare and how you can be involved. That will come in the spring, and that report is designed to be of, by, and for the people. That's what this is really all about. So why did we come to Houston? A lot of people have asked me that. And we chose Houston because you are such a dynamic, growing, and diverse community. You have a lot to protect here. I think you know that. You are the leading city in the country for new business growth, and I'm sure you want to keep it that way. You are a very young population, younger than the national average, and this group looks very young. This is a very good-looking young town hall, and more than 90 languages are spoken here, very diverse. You have 2 international airports, an extremely important port. You are the epicenter of the oil and petroleum industry and also medical research. So that's why we're in Houston, just to name a few reasons. And we're very much looking forward to this conversation. So before we get started, before I introduce the panel, to set the stage for what we're going to talk about, I'm going to ask a couple of you to tell me why you're here, why Homeland Security is important to you. So get prepared for this, because this might happen a couple of times throughout the town hall. So let me just go over here and ask you to please stand up and tell us your name and tell us why you're here and why Homeland Security is important.
My name is Renee Hightower, and I'm with SBC, and one of my major accounts is NASA JSC. And I'm here to represent not just my organization, but also be a liaison there for the center.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's go back here. If you're sitting on the outside, you know that. So stand up and tell me who you are and why you're here.
Jim Harding from Kingwood. I'm here as a member of the Citizens Corps for Public Safety. My wife is the Public Safety Director in our community. I'm also a pachyderm, and one of the topics that comes up constantly in our work is immigration policy and the troubles with the drug infiltration into our community. And I thought this would be a great forum to get the latest info on what direction we're headed in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, one more. Let's see. Would you mind standing up? Tell us your name and why you're here, what Homeland Security means to you.
My name is Jan Wilbur, and I'm here to hear what's being done about Homeland Security and to hear. One of my concerns is that we may lose some of our civil rights and our concern. I'm concerned about that in talking about Homeland Security.
Okay, well, we will address those issues. Thank you very much. So to get us started, let me introduce our very special guest panelist who has come from Washington to talk to us about Homeland Security. Asa Hutchinson, who is the Undersecretary for Border and Transportation Security, a very important job, huge job in Washington and throughout the nation. Asa Hutchinson was a member of Congress from Arkansas for 2 terms. He served on the Select Committee on Intelligence and the House Judiciary Committee. Good preparation for this. And he was elected to a 3rd term, and then President Bush tapped him to head the Drug Enforcement Agency. And now he has been tapped by the President once again to come to Homeland Security. So he can give us the up-to-date information about Homeland Security, address some of the concerns we've heard, and talk about the future. So join me in welcoming the Honorable Asa Hutchinson.
Thank you, Patricia. I am delighted to be back at Rice University at the Baker Institute. Ambassador, thank you for your last occasion in which you hosted me here. I'm just counting on this being a friendlier audience, not talking about drug policy, but Homeland Security. But I enjoyed that occasion, delighted to be back. And I want to express my thanks to the panelists who are with me for their participation, but most importantly, you. And I appreciated the comments about privacy and immigration and technology. They'll be an important part of our discussion. And Homeland Security, setting up the department a little over a year ago. In fact, we're coming up to our 1-year anniversary of bringing on 22 agencies, 180,000 employees. I believe we've made a substantial difference, enhancing aviation security, strengthening our borders. Whenever you look at building the technology that is needed for Homeland Security, I believe the department has done a very, very good job. But clearly, with the fact that the news is reporting a Ricin potential incident in Congress again, that we're still investigating, getting the facts. The fact that we just completed a national security event here in Houston. By the way, you did a great job hosting the Super Bowl and providing security for it. But it was something that we had to concentrate upon. And during that time, 1 flight was canceled coming into Houston over the weekend because of security concerns. The first time a domestic flight was canceled for that reason. The fact that we just announced the President's budget yesterday, in which Homeland Security still had a major priority with a 9% increase in funding. Certainly, it is still on the forefront of our minds and the necessity of our actions. And so even though I think we have done a substantial amount, clearly more work needs to be done. And I think that a strategy is important. And the strategy that we have put together, first of all, is that we have to have technology to use in Homeland Security. We just implemented U.S. Visit at our air and seaports, 115 international airports, including the 2 at Houston, where the first time in the history of our country, a foreign visitor from a visa country will have to come in and confirm their identity biometrically. They'll give 2 finger scans. And since that was implemented on January 5th, we have apprehended 30 criminal aliens trying to enter our country illegally. And I believe our country is safer because of that new technology. Now we face the challenge of bringing that to our land borders. Technology is important. The budget provided $47 million for new technology along the border, $10 million for unmanned aerial vehicles to see if that has an application along our land borders. But it's not just technology. We have to have targeting of our resources, and it has to be information-based. Last July, coming into the Houston airport was a gentleman from Pakistan who is a citizen of Pakistan coming in. He was identified as someone that we ought to have secondary inspection on, and through the questioning process, he produced a business card that we ran through our databases, and that business that was listed on that card came up with a clear connection to the World Trade Center attack. We denied the entry for this gentleman coming into our country. Now, we could not do that type of targeting without information-based systems. Information. And the lady very appropriately asked the question concerning privacy, civil liberties. And I think it's very appropriate that our department has a chief privacy officer, a chief civil rights officer that second guesses us and is a checks and balance on these systems. But it's a constant balancing that we have to do. We have to have information in order to determine those are at risk, to be able to put our resources there. And we want to make sure that individual citizens' privacy is protected during the same time. Finally, I'll mention that obviously we have to secure our border. I'll be testifying on Thursday about the President's immigration initiative, principles that he outlined that will address a very serious security problem in our country, the 8 million undocumented workers that pose a security risk to us when you have individuals in this country that are afraid to call the police, that are living in an underground economy in many ways, that go back to their home country and come illegally across the border. This poses a security challenge. The President boldly said we're going to set some principles, work with Congress to address this. I'm a law and order guy. I was head of the DEA. I was on the crime committee in Congress, and I think it's very important that we fulfill the President's first principle, which is America must secure its borders. We in Texas know that that's a challenge, but we're investing, we're having a strategy, we're working hard to do that, and that's an important part of the President's initiative. And so much to be done. We have a strategy in place. We're working hard. A key part of that strategy is partnerships. And it is not the federal government responsibility. It is not simply the Houston Police Department or the Harris County Sheriff's Department. It is a partnership between all of us and the private sector. And whenever you look at the Port of Houston, it's the private investment in security that is an important part of our partnership. So we're looking at building those partnerships, investing in those. It is not our responsibility in the department to get it all done. That's why the citizen involvement, and I heard the Citizens Council mention, what a terrific job Texas has done in providing leadership on this. And I congratulate you, the active citizen involvement in Homeland Security. So I look forward to the comments today. It is about you. Look forward to the tough questions. I just came from the Houston School of Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice, and I don't think your questions will be any tougher than theirs. So I look forward to that, learning and listening from you, and look forward to the dialogue with our panelists as well. Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you. And I think some of the students from that school are joining us today, so welcome to you as well. I just want to mention that you have cards on your chairs that will give you a place to write a question if you would like to, and we'll have someone pick them up. We want to hear your questions out loud, but we'd also like to hear what you're interested in, and we may call on one of you who writes a question. Let me introduce the panel, and we'll get started. We have with us a very distinguished group of people from Texas and from the Houston area to talk with you. First, Judge Jay Kimber, who is the director of the Office of Homeland Security for the state of Texas, which has really done a terrific job in planning and thinking about a regional approach to Homeland Security. Dr. Herminia Palacio, who is the head of the Harris County Public Health and Environmental Services Agency, that's the public health agency, And we know that bioterrorism and health issues are huge, and so thank you so much for being here. And then next to Undersecretary Hutchinson, we have Judge Robert Eccles, who's the Director of Emergency Management for Harris County, who has done a really great job, not only of planning, but conducting some exercises and drills and really getting this area ready. Major Michael Smith next to him, who's a 30-year veteran of the Sheriff's Office, right on the front line, can talk to us from that perspective. And then we have Donna Morea, who is Executive Vice President for American Management Systems Public Sector Group, who can speak about the private sector and technology and as a citizen as well. So let's do a little bit of Tuesday morning quarterbacking after the Super Bowl, because that was a pretty major event. And a lot of people, not audibly, but were holding their breath about that. A lot of people coming to Houston, very, very public event. Can you tell us a little bit about how that went? And let me ask first Judge Eccles. How did it go? What happened? What didn't happen? What went on behind the scenes?
Well, we did not have a 747 crash into the stadium, so it was good news. Now, the Super Bowl is a culmination of many years. I mean, I wear the hat here today as Director of Emergency Management, but in fact, my job is in other parts of the country might be like county executive or something, and it's a team that comes in behind and makes things work. And Jim White back here, and then John Bales from the city, and the folks throughout the area that work together. The Super Bowl was the county, the city, the state, the Department of Homeland Security, everyone coming together and putting on a show that was great for people. I think the folks that came here from out of town, whether they were from New England or the Carolinas or other parts of the country that just wanted to come see a good football game and come to the party, those folks had a great time and saw what happens when a system works well. We had great traffic management. We had construction folks working on getting the freeways ready. We were beautifying the highways. We were securing at the county the facility, the Reliance Stadium. But what made it work was a history over the last 6 or 8 years of us working together towards making a more secure place and a community that functions well. There is no place in America, I think, that has taken a more regional approach, and where the city and the county and the others in the region, HGAC, our other regional folks, work together towards that regional approach and make it work for the people of the community. Here it worked for several 100,000 visitors from out of town, a seamless operation. And we learn every time we have something like this, but we had hundreds of thousands of folks downtown. We had no one run over by the train. They were able to get in and out of the stadium with a minimum of inconvenience. We had good security at the stadium, and I think folks both enjoyed the game and felt safe while they were here, and that was what it was all about.
Can you fix your? We're having a little sound problem. No, we need to get you a little closer to the microphone. Is that right? Okay. Major Smith, you were on the front line. Tell us how that was. How did it go? And what was better about this than past events when you've been involved? Of course, you haven't had a Super Bowl for a while, but big events in Houston.
Right. Well, expand on what the judge was saying. We have a history, I believe, in this area of working together. I was in a Homeland Security conference in Washington, D.C., and I was actually struck by the fact that a lot of fire, emergency management, police agencies, and local police agencies had never worked together other than very minor events. And you always think, you know, your shop could learn from somebody else. But we have these training drills every now and then we call hurricanes, tropical storms, floods. And we've learned to work together, I think, very well over the years, at least over my 30 years of experience. We have clear-cut lines of where the city picks up, the county picks up the responsibilities. That's very important because that's going to be difficult to determine during the event. And I think because we have these ongoing lines of communications with all our local partners in the surrounding counties, in the event of something like this happens, and I hope we never have to put this into effect, I think we'll be a couple of steps ahead of most areas simply because of the past history of working together on that. It's very important. Who's in charge?
You were out there.
Fortunately, another major had to take over that task, and I took care of the responsibilities left at the Sheriff's Department. But early on, the duties were defined, what the city police were going to do, what the county police were going to do, and it was fairly seamless because of that.
So he was at Command Central, which is very reassuring.
It was a Super Bowl. It was a Super Bowl for these guys, too, that were out there in the field, and they did a great job.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you all, how many of you were, and this is a show of hands, and I apologize to our radio listeners, I'll try to describe this. How many of you all were worried during the Super Bowl period? How many of you thought about what might happen and just had a moment of worry or two? Okay. It's not a majority, but we have many, many hands. Raise them again because I want to find out what you were worried about. Okay, let's see. Tell me your name and tell me what you were worried about.
My name is Malcolm Brown, and I was worried about an aerial attack on the stadiums.
And Asa Hutchinson, we actually had a pretty good strategy around that issue, didn't we?
First of all, when you declare it a national security event, we can restrict the airspace. So restricting the airspace, having air cover is a response to that concern. Obviously, we had commercial flights coming in, and again, when you have specific intelligence, you address that. So that obviously is a worry about whether it's the Rose Bowl or the Super Bowl, and that restricted airspace is a very important part of it, and monitoring that airspace.
Other concerns, other hands. I know I saw hands. Tell me who you are and what you were concerned about.
My name's Sandy Steigerwald, and I live walking distance from the stadium and heard all of the overhead stuff, which was great, but as a neighborhood, I didn't feel that we were very prepared, knew exactly what to expect, what would happen if. And so part of that was just, and I have a lot of folks in my neighborhood that are older, just wouldn't have known what to do in my neighborhood.
Judge Eccles, do you want to respond to that concern?
Sure, and that's exactly one of the problems that we have, whether it's an event like the Super Bowl or a flood or a fire. We have created through the county, with the city's cooperation, everyone, a Harris County Citizens Corps and a community emergency response team. We don't have one, obviously, in your neighborhood, and we need to get in there and do that. It's a relatively new program. The president announced the Citizens Corps, I guess, about 18 months ago or so, and we were one of the first ones in the country. But we need to come in and do a little better job, apparently, at least in your neighborhood, of having those kinds of folks ready for whatever the disaster might be. Our goal is to build, through that program, a sustainable response to what's more likely to happen. We were never really likely to have a terrorist attack at the Super Bowl. You want to be prepared for it, but more likely you're going to have a big traffic jam or a riot or somebody getting a fight at the stadium or something. We had great fans and good folks coming in this time. But our goal through the Community Emergency Response Team and moreover through our Citizens Corps is to build a sustainable response so people in the community know how to respond, who to call, what to do if something happens. And I'm glad to have the point made for us that we need to do a better job in those areas right around the special events.
We are going to be talking more about this because this is a theme that we've actually heard all across the country. You know, good planning, but a bit of a gap between the plans and the people out in the community. So we will definitely come back to that. And I want to mention that before you came, we asked you all to answer some questions for us. Not all of you did, because I think some of you were pretty focused on the Super Bowl and having a good time, but many of you did. And so we learned that you are, in terms of the greatest threat to Homeland Security here in Houston, you said the number one threat was an attack on a public place, like a stadium, very timely. And then an attack on critical infrastructure in this community and perhaps throughout the state, a huge issue. And I want to ask Judge Kimber to comment on that and how you're thinking about that in this very large state, very long border, lots of critical infrastructure.
Well, number one, let me echo what's been said about this region, because that's really the key to all these defense mechanisms, if you will, in this preparedness process. In fact, what I say to people when I'm out making speeches about this is it's the 3 R's: regionalism, regionalism, regionalism. You know, and people are beginning to work and think more and more in that particular area. But also when we think about defense of critical infrastructure or any attack in any city. And my son is a police officer. My daughter works for the prison system. My wife works for a sheriff. So my whole culture is this law enforcement culture. But it's really a sort of a 5-stage perimeter. You know, the projection of force abroad, that's spot number one. So it is those troops in Iraq, it is those troops in Afghanistan, those things that disrupt and destroy the capability to get to the Port of Houston. That's what this is really all about, and that's the great victory, I think, that the United States can claim here. And then it is this synergy between the international intelligence community, the American intelligence community, the state resources that come together, and finally, actually for me, this final perimeter, if you will, that's the neighborhood. That's somebody who sees something out of the ordinary. That's somebody, a security guard or an employee who says, that truck doesn't belong here. That guy, that woman, that person doesn't belong here. So ultimately, when these 5 perimeters, if you will, collapse down into this area, using all the technology, the interdiction methods of aviation, all the things that have happened, it ultimately will boil down to, is that security guard, is that neighborhood, is that individual out in that neighborhood, does he or she see something that doesn't look or sound right, and then communicates it to the proper folks. But the size of this place... Who would be the
proper folks? I mean, if you did see something, if somebody here saw something that seemed quite unusual, what should they do?
Because I tell you, I get a lot of calls direct to my direct line.
That's right.
And I tell people, have you called your sheriff? Have you called your police? Have you called local law enforcement? Because there are now people, and of course the Department of Homeland Security welcomes those direct calls to Washington. But if there's a problem that occurs in this particular community, call your police. It's an outstanding department. Call your sheriff. You contact local law enforcement first and foremost to pass on that information.
So that really is the front line. Another threat that people are very concerned about here in Houston and all across the country is bioterrorism. I mean, we heard another example this morning of a threat in the U.S. Senate. Dr. Palacio, can you talk a little bit about bioterrorism? Are we prepared here in Houston, and what's going on in that arena?
What's going on in that arena is actually very similar in terms of the approach. We do have multiple public health agencies charged with protecting the health of the public from a multitude of threats, including many of the health threats that we face every day, in addition to bioterrorism. As an example, for the Super Bowl, the Houston Health Department, the Harris County Health Department, Garrison County Health District, Fort Bend County Health Department, and the Texas Department of Health Regional Office here in Texas all gathered together and met and did some of the planning, and we were in contact the whole time and responsible, and we all have each other's contact numbers, and so our job is to be alert and to identify and, again, to communicate the kinds of intelligence that we gather.
Do you communicate by telephone? Is that how you communicate?
We communicate by a multiplicity of methods. You know, my kids call me Gadget Girl because, you know, I come home and I put the beeper on the table, and I put the phone on the table, and I put the radio on the table. And and we have multiple redundant means of communication should one of them fail.
Mm-hmm. With law enforcement and agencies outside the public health arena.
And if I can add to this, please. For example, this entire process, what the public doesn't see and know is the synergy and the coordination and communication from this local level all the way up to the Department of Homeland Security, CDC, and all these other federal agencies. We have a lot of conference calls, but those are good things, and they're very coordinated, and it's not something that's apparent, but I can assure you it's happening and it's effective.
Okay, well, let me come back to you and ask you, what are your biggest concerns about Homeland Security? What are you most concerned about? Not just during the Super Bowl, but in general. So let me see, who has a concern? Okay, let me come over here.
My name is Brian Callahan. I'm a captain in the Civil Air Patrol. We have volunteers that are ready. We've never been contacted or integrated into a plan for our region. Our main concern in the Civil Air Patrol is that we have resources that are available to provide aerial reconnaissance and surveillance over our critical facilities, but it seems like that has not been a priority as far as directed toward our organization. We have people, over 900 volunteers in this region that are already trained in search and rescue, both air and ground. We've never been contacted or integrated. We'd like to see that happen. That's a concern for us. Our major concern is the ship channel and the petrochemical facilities, and also the dams that we have and bridges in the area. We can help with that, but we've never been asked to.
Judge Eccles.
Great asset. The Civil Air Patrol is a wonderful organization. We will get you with our emergency management. Jim? Because we can need you. We've got the sheriff's had helicopters, and the city has helicopters, and we have professional patrols, but there are always times when we're going to have a need for somebody to fill that hole. Now, for the channel, it's a unique challenge because when we talk about critical infrastructure, it's not just the infrastructure for our community, but it's a strategic infrastructure for America. Because an attack on certain plants and connections and pipelines and things in the port can shut off fuel oil to Detroit. And so we have not only our own local critical infrastructure, our power plants, our fuel supply, our natural gas, just the economy of Houston through the port, but we also worry about the national strategic infrastructure that we have located in Houston if Exxon Baytown were to shut down, or Shell Deer Park, or one of the major refineries that supplies product all over the world. And so it's good points, and we do have drills. We have done a lot on the port as far as security, and we had a weapons of mass destruction exercise at the port. Department of Homeland Security, the state, the local folks. It is a full-blown effort of a model of what happens if a radioactive, in this case a dirty bomb, went off, as well as various attacks on various refineries in the Channel area, how we responded. And we go through those drills, much as Major talked about with the hurricanes and the same drills that we do for natural disasters. And so we are drilling for those type of items, but you're a great asset that we need to be able to make sure it's plugged into.
So you're ready to call on the Civil Air Patrol to help.
And whenever that's incorporated into the state of Texas plan, or this area's plan, let us know about it. I think that this is something that needs to be used nationally when we're at a higher alert level. Particularly, we need to have that type of coverage.
Judge Kimbrough?
Absolutely. Very good point.
Okay. I'm glad you came today.
Yes, sir.
That's great. And I want to ask, I know that Wade Battles, who is the director of the port, is right here on the front row. And I'd like to ask you to say a word about the port and how that security is working and whether some of these volunteers could be helpful to you.
Well, thank you very much. You know, obviously, security at the port is a critical issue, not only for the public authority, but also for all the private facilities that align the ship channel. Working with our primary focus on security is with the United States Coast Guard, and we work very closely with the captain of the port and Captain Kaiser, who is here. And we have formed the Area Security Committee, Area Marine Security Committee, and through that committee, we have a coordinated effort. And once again, it's a regional effort because our region for the port is Port of Houston, but also Texas City, Galveston, and Freeport. So we meet on a monthly basis. We look at what sort of requirements we need, huge infrastructure requirements, looking towards help with getting grants from government to be able to improve our infrastructure. But at the same time, one of the critical elements has been the increase in communications across the different agencies and across the different organizations.
So that's working better. Okay. Okay. Well, there was one more I want to come to, and then I've got a question for all of you.
Thank you. My name is John Martinek with the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership. We have developed a Ellington Field Task Force, and Judge Eccles certainly is aware of our effort at this point. It's we deal largely with the infrastructure as well. Our concern is, and our mission is to retain, related to the Department of Defense, retain those military units like and the 147th Fighter Wing out at Ellington Field, as well as the Civil Air Patrol. And so our mission is to do everything we can. We have pulled a plan together that has a mission of retaining the 147th and building Ellington Field to a large extent to increase its viability and the ability to keep 147th there. One of our key plans is to introduce a Homeland Security, or propose a Homeland Security headquarters for the region be placed out at Ellington Field. So that's both a concern and part of our plan.
Okay. Any response, Judge Kimber?
We used Ellington Field during the Super Bowl this weekend. We had a large cache of equipment and state resources there to be able to come to the assistance of city or county resources, so that indeed is a launching pad with those kind of capabilities. We took advantage of it.
The proximity of those fighters for this Houston area with a high degree, we're the only region I know of in the nation that has every one of the FBI identified terrorist threat targets, and you mentioned those in the introduction. But the having that military presence here and the capacity to respond quickly is very critical, we think, to the Houston region.
Okay, we've got a lot of people who want to be involved, and that's what I thought. I thought that was the reason that you came. Let's take another one. Stand up and say your name.
Thank you. Yes, Stan Merriman is the name. I'm the chair of the Progressive Populist Caucus of the Texas Democratic Party, and I'm here today to ask a question of the administration. Do you see a correlation between a bellicose and belligerent foreign policy and the very reason that we are sitting here today discussing this problem?
Okay, I think that's for you, Undersecretary Hutchinson.
You thought the DEA was a tough group.
I think that the foreign effort, as the Judge Kimber said earlier, that is probably the most significant investment that we can make to secure our homeland. I was asked by the media, how can you justify $87 billion expenditures in Afghanistan and Iraq whenever we have Homeland Security needs? And the answer is that's the best investment we can make. Whenever we dismantle 2/3 of the al-Qaeda leadership, whenever we get information from the detainees, we can identify cells here, we can use the intelligence to protect the homeland, and it keeps that battle far away from our homeland. So I applaud the men and women and our efforts that are being made overseas. Now, I think part of your question, sir, is foreign policy and how we diffuse the underlying causes of terrorism. Is that relevant to Homeland Security? And certainly it is. I think that the peace effort in the Middle East, the establishment of new moderate regimes, democratic processes in this region of the world that has been historically so explosive is very important. So obviously we need to work foreign policy diminishing the root causes, but also have a very aggressive effort to protect our homeland. I think this administration is doing that.
This is great because we can have a debate. If everybody agrees on everything here, this wouldn't be a very interesting conversation. Let me ask you all a question, and again, we're going to do this with a show of hands. How many of you feel safer today than you did a year ago? How many of you think you're safer today than a year ago? Okay, that is not a majority. That's interesting. How many of you there are two other answers. One is about the same, and the other is less safe. How many of you feel less safe? Okay, that's fewer. And how many of you think it's about the same? Okay, well, I think most people feel safer today than they did a year ago. So let's talk about that. And in one dimension, I'd like to ask Donna Morea from AMS, one of the issues that comes up a lot in our conversations is this whole issue of cybersecurity. We have these communication systems that have been developed. I think some of you have talked about how your communication systems are much better. We're investing in that. How do we keep them safe, and what are the prospects there?
Well, let me answer in two ways. First of all, we all actually have had a lot of experience in cybersecurity recently through viruses. And the work that the web browser is probably the most accessible technology that we've seen in our generation, and also therefore the most accessible for us shopping on eBay, but also the most accessible for terrorists to enter into the system. And so we have the wonderful paradox of an accessible technology. The good news is that that more recently we have seen better and better tools to detect intrusion. And in fact, even though we've seen so many viruses like this recent monster virus, for the most part, the impact of those kinds of attacks have been basically to shut some things down, but not to destroy things. And those tools will get better. But my view is that that's sort of the outside-in way of looking at cybersecurity. And I think perhaps the more interesting and more useful approach is to take the inside-out approach. And that inside-out approach has two parts in my view. One part is that we all need to know what our most valuable and protected information is, and protect that from the inside out. So even if somebody gets in the front door, they can't get into the safe. That's a technological answer. Then there's the people answer. And I think that what you've heard, even through the answers on first responder kind of security, is the communication, the processes, and the actions that people can take are probably our most powerful weapon in cybersecurity. We have done a lot of work simulating cyber attacks, and the lessons we've learned most from that are the kinds of processes that we can put in place to communicate with each other and react quickly and learn how to recover quickly. So even though I'm a technologist, I would say that the most powerful answers really rely on collaboration, communication, and processes that we can put in place together.
It seems to always come down to people. Undersecretary Hutchinson, are we safer today than a year ago, and why? How are we safer?
Absolutely we are. And I think that the American public demonstrates that, whether in a forum as this or a national poll, or in the fact that they continue flying over the holidays during a time of increased alert and cancellation of some flights. And I think that confidence is expressed in them continuing that activity, understanding the nature of the business today. But in reality, we are more secure as well in aviation, with the hardened cockpit doors, with the 100% screening passenger bags, whenever you look at the borders. But probably most significantly, I noticed in the questionnaires that you gave this audience, intelligence sharing is a huge issue. And I think that we're safer because we're doing a better job of intelligence sharing. Not where we need to be, but much better. And the teamwork aspect has been built. Now that the team has been built and some of the barriers broken down, we need to concentrate on some of the technical solutions and the old technical barriers to accomplish that objective. But those are some of the reasons that we're more secure today. And brag a little bit on the department, I think that has been a catalyst for some of these changes.
Judge Kimbrough, on a scale of 1 to 10, how safe are we?
Well, how bad is 1?
Let's say 1
I don't do numbers.
1 is really
I don't
bad.
do numbers, and I don't do odds, because if the worst happens, it was no consolation that you felt high. But I'll tell you this.
Okay.
I raised my hand when I said I'm a whole lot safer than I was a year or two ago. And the reason I feel that way is because I know what's going on. Now, what happens is we don't get all that information out through the media that talks about those kinds of positive things, those victories that are being obtained. The sharing of intelligence with federal law enforcement and local law enforcement and state law enforcement, light years improved from September the 10th, 2001. So there are always going to be crazy people out there and people that are mad at us, whether we call them some name or not. We're always going to have some threat. It's a biblical thing. The world's full of mean and evil people. But the accomplishments of the last 2 years are significant. As the Secretary said, there is a lot left to do. But I wouldn't trade places with anybody in the world, and I wouldn't trade places with anybody in any other state. So I feel a whole lot better than I did 2 years ago.
Well, this issue of, the scale and numbers, and it's obviously that's artificial, but it's really a question, I think, for all of us. Where do we want to be on that scale? I mean, what's the right balance? Because in order to be completely secure, if that's 10, we are going to be giving up something for that. So, it's a tough question, and I don't think there are easy, ready answers. The good news is that we're making progress, and so many people do feel safer. We asked in that same poll that you took about the greatest concerns, your greatest concerns in the approach of government. And what you said was, and we've actually heard this everywhere we've gone, interesting, that your greatest concern is the lack of coordination and information sharing among government agencies at all levels, from the front line up through the state, federal, and maybe even international. And that's where we see the technology enablers playing such an important role, but not the only role. So I want to ask, we have some experts here. I want to ask Bill Mutel from Hewlett-Packard. What are you seeing in terms of coordination and information sharing, and what's happening on that front all across the country, not just in Houston?
Well, I think, as been alluded to, there are three foundational pillars that comprise Homeland Security: people, process, and technologies. In terms of the technologies, what we heard from the undersecretary is that interoperability and information sharing is getting better. Well, in fact, it needs to get a whole lot better, both at the horizontal level, in and among the intelligence agencies, law enforcement community, and Defense Department as well. But mostly at the vertical level, there has to be information sharing from the National Command Authority all the way down to the state and local level. It's very important to centralize intelligence because you need to protect sources and methods. But you certainly want to proliferate and get information out to the communities as quickly as possible so they can take that actionable intelligence and turn it into responsive and reactive means for the community.
Susie Henderson from SBC Communications. Do you think the communications are better today than they were a year ago? And give me an example.
I absolutely do. I think we've been real fortunate in working with some very creative people in the Department of Homeland Security that have recognized the need for information sharing. And some of the things that we're doing with the information sharing and analysis centers at the state, local, and federal government level are really helpful to us as a communications company to quickly get messages out and quickly disseminate information.
Okay, I do want to ask Major Smith about the communication how you communicate with the other frontline agencies. Can you tell me how that works? I mean, I know it's not perfect because it can't be perfect. Just tell me how it works. How do you communicate with the fire, public health, emergency workers, some of the other frontline workers? Is that easy when you're out there on the street?
Well, we have multiple ways we do it. The most common thing now is email system. I think that's been pointed out before. Some days you get so many, you're like, well, I'm going to get these all read today. And everybody has working groups. Everybody, I know I get something from Mike Montgomery, the fire marshal, probably every day, and we email back and forth, and with the judge's office and his aides. That's probably the greatest tool we have right now. All our cars have mobile computers, so we can actually push it down to the...
You can do that when you're actually driving around.
We're past the MDT stage.
Mm-hmm.
One of the challenges, we're working very well towards pulling, we've got over 300 agencies on our county radio system, and we're working better and better with the city all the time in the region for communication between the law enforcement groups. But one of the challenges is getting that word into the community when things happen. And the lady that mentioned earlier, the neighborhood, we can put emails, we can put websites up, we can get on the radio and the television, but if they're not watching, they don't hear. And we learned that in Tropical Storm Allison. It was a great lesson for us that we've got the technology, but we also had people that didn't have power. So they had no phone, they had no television, they had no radio, and the way they got their message for the recovery was from the sticker on the grocery store down the road. They go to the Fiesta Mart and they saw just a deal. So you've got to have the whole spectrum to get between law enforcement and the community.
This is a huge issue. And I think this is the issue, one of the most important issues that we can address today. How do you get connected into all of this? Because if you're not, then it's probably not going to work the way you want it to. Let me ask you a question about, because I know, because I've looked at it, that there are amazing plans in Harris County, in Houston, in the region, in the states, in the public health community. A lot of good work has been done by these people. Let me ask you about your knowledge of some of these plans. And this will be by a show of hands again. And I'm going to start with plans that might be the most direct. How many of you are aware of plans, preparedness plans, in your children's schools? Okay, raise your hands. Actually, that's quite a few. How many of you actually have children in schools, just so I can get an idea of how this works? Okay, well, I would say that's about half who are aware of plans. So that's a very good thing, and we haven't seen that in other communities. What about in your workplaces? Because there, again, in your workplaces, do you know what to do if something happens? Do you have plans, and are you aware of them? Okay, raise higher so I can tell what we've got here. That is, I would say, maybe about a quarter of you. So that's not very many. And that's a place where a lot of progress could be made. How about your local plan in this local area? Are you aware of your local plan and how you fit in? Okay, that's even fewer. I think we're down to maybe about 15 or 20%. How about state or regional plans? Okay, about the same number. This gap is very important, and it's not one that is easily filled, because this is not necessarily, you can put a website up or you can do all sorts of things, but unless people come, it's not going to work. We're going to have to do something about pushing this information out. And so I'd like to turn to our media sponsor from KTRH News Radio and ask the morning anchor, Mr. Pritchard, what about the role of the media? I mean, is there a role for the media, television, radio, newspapers? Stand up and tell us how you think this might work better.
Oh, I could go on for about half an hour here if you wanted me to, but I'll try to keep this, since I'm in radio, I'll try to keep it to soundbite level. First of all, you can't communicate all this information we're talking about all at once. It has to be an ongoing process of getting the information out. And to do that effectively, you have to have a relationship with people in the media. And you don't develop that in the middle of a crisis. This takes trust, it takes give and take. It takes an effort on both people's parts, on both institution parts. And I say institutions, but when it really comes down to it, it's people talking to people, working these things out in advance, knowing who you can trust and who you can't trust. There are people in the media you can't trust. There are people in the media you can trust. And I think that it's very important to figure out who those people are before you get into the crisis situation. I think you also have to realize that if you're going to deal with news people, you have to deal at an open level. It's kind of like dealing with a banker. They don't expect you to give the company secrets to the banker. The banker doesn't want to know your proprietary formula for hamburgers or whatever, but the banker does want to see your accounting. And that's the way it is with media, too. They want to know that the process is open, that it's transparent. We're not looking for the secret intelligence information. We're looking for the information that goes into the process. And finally, I think you have to keep it simple. A great example of how simple got out of control, though, was the color-coded warning system. That had to be refined a little bit. I think you got that kind of figured out now, that it can be a regional system. But it has to be a simple thing. If you start to talk to a reporter and his eyes glaze over, you can figure that the people in the audience's eyes are going to glaze over too. So you have to keep it at a level that everybody can understand and so on. And one more thing, and then I'll let you get out of here, and that is that I'd like to ask everybody in the room if I could take just this measure of control. How many people in the room have a battery-operated radio in their home?
That's really good.
How many people have a radio in their car? Everybody, I bet. What happened during Allison, when a lot of people lost power? What happened during Alicia 20-some years ago, when everybody lost power? They couldn't turn on their television. Their newspaper wasn't getting published, or it wasn't getting delivered. People have to have radio. So we run into this all the time. People forget. I'm sorry this sounds like self-serving information, but the truth is that we try very hard to serve our community. And we can't do that if you folks forget about us.
So you are open to real substantive partnerships in this community and beyond. Because one thing I will say, as we've done these town halls around the country, we've gone to the media in every city and asked them to partner with us, and the doors have been wide open. And there really has been a lot of interest in a more substantive discussion about how to maybe even hold discussions like this more frequently, not just when, you know, a group like ours comes to town, and certainly about how to get the information out to the public.
TRH2 is a great partner in the community, and I'll give a plug here too. And their listenership, their ratings go up whenever we have a storm. That's the problem, is that people don't really want to hear about these things until the hurricane is sitting out in the Gulf getting ready to come into town, or the plane has crashed or something. Then they say, oh, what do I do? And they turn on the radio and want to know. And it's the challenge is how to get that out during the time when things are calm so they're ready.
You mentioned that we have to push information out. I think it's twofold. We have to do a better job of getting information out, and I think the partnership of the media can play into this. We have to create a receptivity on the part of the public. As the judge said, the temptation is, well, we don't want to deal with it until there's a crisis. You don't like to spend time and energy thinking about what you need to do in the event of. And so I think the media plays a huge role in educating the public as to how you have to be receptive to information. It has to be a gradual thing, and we need to do better pushing it out, and we need to also educate the public as to why this information is important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually what we hear, and I think what you're saying, some of you, maybe I should ask the question of all of you, do you want more information? I mean, are you interested in having more information before something happens? How many? You know, I think that's a very strong message. And we do know that people like to get their information from radio. They also like to get it from television and other means. Email is on the websites is another way, but radio and television seem to be the preferred modes. Let's talk a little bit about, we have a question or a comment?
My name is Sonia Lopez, and I'm with the Greater Harris County 911 Network. We work with the county and all of our other jurisdictions. A tool that's recently been implemented is news, and Judge Eccles is a big fan of it also. It's called the Neighborhood Early Warning System. It is a tool used by jurisdictions in the event that they need to notify citizens of something in their area. It is it's a telephone warning type system where citizens can be called within a particular area for various reasons.
So how would that work? Judge Eccles, you want to tell us?
It's like a reverse 911. We go in and we can target the community and make telephone calls because as many people, there are tens of thousands of people listening to your radio station today, but there's 3 million that aren't. Mm-hmm. And so when we want to go into an area like your neighborhood by the Astrodome, if there was a problem in your neighborhood, we could have gone in and made telephone calls working with SBC and the technology there to tell you this is the problem and this is how you get out. You were not even aware that was there. And we need to make sure that folks are more aware of that. And really the only way to tell you is to activate it. It kind of makes people nervous when you start calling.
Okay, let me ask a question about how much all of this is costing. Undersecretary Hutchinson, you mentioned that the budget has come out and there's a 9% increase for Homeland Security. And I know that in the local area, when the terror alert goes up to orange, some things happen. I mean, this is not without tremendous cost. First, Undersecretary Hutchinson, tell us about the Homeland Security budget from a national perspective. How do you think about allocating that? How do you measure performance? Who do you hold accountable for what? How do we know what we're getting for these dollars?
Excellent. First of all, the President's budget that was submitted did have a 9% increase. I believe it's $40 billion. That would be the Department of Homeland Security. Now, you could ask the question, how much are we spending as a nation? That figure probably is out there. I don't have that. But then you have to add in what other departments are, what the states are doing. So we're investing a lot in Homeland Security. Now, you have to ask yourself, how much is too much? And you have to have some measurement sticks. You have to have some budget constraints. There are those that advocate that we inspect 100% of the 6 million containers that come into our country. Well, we can do that, but it's going to cost billions of dollars more. Is that the right strategy, or should we be a more targeted approach to it? You ask about measuring sticks. That's hard to measure, first of all. We are working very hard in developing measuring standards for the money that we are investing. When you look at the U.S. visit program, we measure that, and we're going to be judged by that performance. Whenever you look at the money that's going to the states, here in the Houston area, I believe it's $70 million. Well, we're insisting upon a state plan so that it holds them accountable. There's an organized plan as to how the money is invested so it's not contradicted. And that's slowing down the process a little bit, but I think it's an important part of the investment. But there's some things you can't measure. Deterrence of terrorism. How do you measure deterrence? How do you measure confidence in transportation? How do you measure the prevention efforts of a terrorist attack in our ports and the economic consequence that would result from an attack? How do you measure that? And so there's some qualitative areas that are very difficult, but it's something that is important for our economic growth as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, getting the strategy right is really important, but it obviously can't be completely quantitative. Let me ask, because I know John Bales is here from the mayor's office. How do you think about this issue on the local level, allocating funds and measuring performance? Who do you hold accountable, and what do you hold them accountable for?
Well, can I hold it? Okay. Feel more comfortable with that. How do we measure performance? We measure performance, Mr. Hutchinson brought up excellent points of view. You can't really measure what you've prevented. And it's our position we need to prevent terrorist activities here. And that's where we put a lot of our efforts. We know what we have spent for additional security at the airports. We know what we have spent for additional security at our water facilities and at other locations where we have had extra security ever since September 11th, and in some cases before September 11th. But, there is no quantitative measure that we can use. We can tell you that, as an example, this weekend, we spent a lot of money. The city of Houston did, Harris County did, a lot of the private enterprise spent a lot of money making sure that we did what we needed to do to have a safe and secure Super Bowl weekend. And we did. We made it through that. Did we worry about it? Yes, we worried about it. But we put all the resources that we could bring and afford to bring, and we accomplished that. How do we measure that? We had a good, safe weekend. We had hundreds of thousands of people here in Houston who enjoyed themselves. We had a great football game. I don't know what the economic impact to this area is, but it's got to be a pretty good economic impact to our area.
Well, thank you. I think you did. You hit a home run with the Super Bowl, and hopefully the economics worked out as well. We are going to be looking for measures in our report, and so we really got to keep putting our thinking caps on, because we think even though it all can't be quantitative, you really do have to figure out how to measure these things. We have some students from Rice University in the aisles with microphones, and I saw a lot of hands up before. So,
as you're moving towards this, folks, one of the things that has been important on the way this money has been spent is that they're not reinventing security in America, but they have put a lot of cash into coordinating security in America. And that's what you're seeing in the whole issue. It's a sustainable response that makes us not only better for terrorists, but better for the police when they're responding to the burglary or the armed robbery or prevention of crime. And you can't point to the plane that didn't crash or the bomb that didn't go off, but we can point to a safer country and a safer community because of the better coordination that these funds have helped to drive.
Okay. You can buy all the fire trucks in the world and all the armies in the world, but if you can't communicate and coordinate and have a strategic plan and a tactical plan to hit the street, it has no value. So You cannot measure that piece. It's very difficult.
And I would certainly.
Money all along.
Yeah.
We're messing up your.
No, that's okay, Dr.
Sorry.
Palacio.
Yeah, I would also certainly chime in as we look at the opportunities to measure that, you know, much of what we do and much of what this money has come in to do is to make us good at what we do every single day and to allow us to intensify those activities when faced with imminent threat. It's not reasonable to ask us to respond to threat with new activities that we're not exercising on a very frequent, if not daily basis.
Okay, I think we have a question, concern here.
My name is John Wilson. I'm here to represent Harris County Department of Education, the Center for Safe and Secure Schools. We represent 27 school districts in the Harris County area. That translates into over 700,000 students and over 900 campuses. My concern is that education is at the table all the time in planning these activities, and sometimes we're not. Now, Undersecretary, we received the third largest grant recently of $733,000 in a partnership in the area with 13 school districts, and it's got training components in it, it's got some communication components in it, but we have a long way to go with this because it's very important that schools are at the table and they're tied in integrally into the communication network, because I can tell you from personal experience, and I was a former superintendent for a long time, that when you have a situation that involves your school, your telephone system is tied up because of the first thing that parents do, they're going to pick up the phone and call and say, what happens to my child? And you're immediately operating without backup systems. That's just one piece of the pie. If we have some type of bioterroristic issue, and there are shelter-in-place issues, there are all kind of issues that need to be dealt with, it's important that the education community is at the front line, at the table. We're not first responders, but we have to remember we deal with two of the most important things people have, their money, but most importantly, their children. And they get excited about the latter real quick. And if any school is involved, I promise you it will be an epicenter of people converging on the scene to deal with the issue. So I guess my concern, to lay it out, is we need help in the education community in dealing with the issue to make sure we're integrally part of the strategic planning process, but also we have got to develop redundant systems in communication, and it's got to be more than internet and regular telephone lines. There have to be backup redundancy kinds of issues. Otherwise, we're shut down with a lot of kids in our care trying to deal with crisis issues.
This is a big issue. Undersecretary, would you like to speak to that? I think several of you can speak to that.
Well, one, I'm glad you raised that. That's an excellent point. And clearly, you need to be engaged. When you have $700,000 grant, you need to be engaged locally in the planning process because you're a critical part of it. But also, I hear it from a national level. I think that we need to probably do a better job and listen more to the educational community and develop Homeland Security plans that center in that. So I'm just grateful for the point that you made.
We have placed, and we work very well with the schools, and I appreciate you being here too, Dr. Wilson. We have recently done a contract with the schools on our as a community-based site for our vaccination or immunization programs in the event of a biological threat, and Dr. Palacio can speak more to that. We have placed radios in all of the schools in the community that will give an emergency broadcast bypassing the telephones. We, through our emergency management office, have a coordination for school closures to let the parents know so they've got another location to be there. And again, our radio system, we've got contracts with some of the school districts, although not all of them in the region, so that the police within the schools can communicate with the city police or the county sheriffs or constables. So we are working with the schools, but we still do have a lot more that we can do. And we appreciate the partnership that we have now with the Harris County Education Department as well as the other superintendents in the area.
Well, this sounds like a good connection because we also heard that that parents aren't aware of the plans in the schools. And
8-year-old daughter in school, and we can talk about it all day long, but you ask my wife to, what's going on at the school. She knows the plan at the school better than I do. If there's a problem at my school, the parents are going to be there. They're not going to, you say stay home, shelter in place. They're not going to shelter in place. They're going to go and take care of their kids. Yeah. And it is a real dilemma. And
there are things to do, and the kinds of partnerships that we're talking about and the people who are stepping up to volunteer are really great examples of that. I know we have a question from Bill Butler about some of the petrochemical plants. Is that right? Bill, are you here? Would you stand up and you will receive a microphone and you can ask your question?
Yes, I had a question about chemical plants. This, as you know, it's a chemical area here. Many of the plants put barricades up, extra security, perimeter patrols, and all that. But we have trucks going in and out of these chemical plants, up and down our highways, stopping in truck stops, rest areas. And, the plants protect it within their perimeters. But once it gets out on the highways and in the communities and all, what's the plan for that?
Well, first of all, thank you for your investment in security. This illustrates when you're looking at, petrochemical that you have to invest. You're doing that. You've got, there's some grant money that's out there that we're investing as well with you. But you're pointing up a challenge for us. First of all, there's a congressional mandate that the drivers of hazardous material has to have background checks. And so we're starting in that process that will at least say this driver that's going to be driving hazardous material, doesn't have a criminal record, doesn't have a terrorist watch list connection. And then, of course, part of that is the company that you're dealing with, and this is something that you can do. We're asking businesses like you to partner with your transportation sector, the supply chain. Have you validated that the company you're dealing with has a good track record in security? Do they vet their drivers? Do they have their drivers make sure they don't pick up strangers, or that whenever they leave their vehicle that it's appropriately guarded and protected? These are steps that you have to have a private sector solution. There was a little comment about the alert level. I was in Kansas, and Grondike Trucking Company came up to me and said, I want you to know what we do whenever we go to a higher level of alert. They had a yellow placard, an orange placard, and a red placard. And that this is a private trucking company, but whenever we're at yellow, they put that out for their drivers. And they have beside it, these are the security measures we expect you to take. If you go to orange, they put the sign out orange. The drivers know their security plan. This is the type of company that we need to be partnering with, and I think those are a couple answers to you, but you have to be looking for solutions, and we're going to be doing more in checking in that transportation arena.
Judge Kimbrough, did you want to?
Well, I think the Secretary said it, and it comes down again to that information and intelligence sharing piece. The best defense is for me to know that is a suspect operation, that is a suspect vehicle, that driver doesn't check out. There are a lot of humans driving vehicles around in this country, so we obviously can't check every vehicle. That's why that information and intelligence sharing is so pivotal and critical. So, and the technology is also coming along. GIS capabilities that tell us where is that truck, has it deviated from a route, has the cargo been opened, has the door been opened in some way that was unauthorized, as well as the other criminal history background checks that have been mentioned about operators. So that information and intelligence piece, as well as the technology that's setting on around the vehicle, if you will, that will bore down very, very deeply into that sector to tell us if something's out of place.
You want to say something about the chemical threats?
I did, and mostly I wanted to say that this actually illustrates the point about things we do every day. In terms of probabilities, the chances of that truck being involved in a car accident are probably much greater than nefarious intent. And these are the types of activities which our Harris County Fire Marshal does with hazmat, which our Public Health Department responds to with pollution control, is really dealing with the threats that these chemical spills pose. And it's that type of everyday activity that makes us better equipped to be able to respond to the same type of event, but from a different intent.
Let me ask No Salinas, who has a question, who actually wants to be empowered, I think, to do something. Would you like to express your concern?
My name is Noe Salinas.
Noe.
Earlier, when you asked if we felt safer today than we did a year ago, and I was one of the hands that said not really. And the reason for that is I'm very grateful for the public sector and all that they've done to prepare us to respond in the event of a terrorist attack. But as a private citizen, I haven't been personally trained on what to do and how to respond and what I can participate in. I know that some of the basic things, if I see someone taking pictures of my workplace, I do report it to security. I jog a lot, and when I see people who are filming cars, I report it to the local officials. But I don't know if anything ever comes of that. So I'm not particularly feeling a whole lot better about it. And just like to know where can I go to learn what I can do to make the community a safer place?
That's a great question. And before we answer it or start that conversation, I want to ask all of you, how many of you do want to be involved? How many of you would like to do something? Okay, raise high so I can really see what you're... And I think this is just about everybody. And that's a huge message that we're hearing in this town hall. You want to be involved, but you're not sure what to do. Let me ask you how much you want to be involved. This is where we might, find out just how serious you are. Do you want to be involved 1 hour a week, 5 hours a week, 10 or more hours a week? Which one? How about 1 hour a week? Would you be willing to volunteer some time? Okay, raise high. Okay, that's a few. How about 5 hours a week? Even more? How about 10 or more hours a week? About the same number. So we've got a lot of people, and the rest of you who didn't raise your hand must be like maybe 2 or 3 days a week or more. But we definitely have a lot of people who want to be involved, want to know what to do, want to be connected into the planning and the drills and all the things that you have going on. We see the school system, and I'm sure the school kids and parents the same way. So, what's the answer to that? Judge Eccles.
How many of you heard of the Citizens Corps or the Harris County Community Emergency Response Team? If you look in your seat,
that's quite a few.
Everybody in here has on their seat a brochure about that. So you've heard about it, you just didn't realize it. We have a program out there that trains communities to respond within your neighborhood. And if the chlorine truck flips over on the side of the road and you have a leak, they train you how to respond to that. If the bio is rising, and your job is to go into the neighborhood, as the lady was talking about earlier, and know your neighbors. Because the fire department can't know everyone who is elderly and at home and can't get out. They can't know who has kids or what's going on, but the neighbors can. And the whole concept behind the Citizens Corps and the Community Emergency Response Team is to have volunteers in the community who are trained to do exactly what you're talking about doing, know how to handle, they have the minimal equipment there, and they can be ready to assist the first responders, to be available until the first responders show up, or if it's a massive event like Tropical Storm Allison, be able to step in and perform many of the functions that a first responder might respond to, because we just can't be at 90,000 homes at one time. It is there. We have trained people in various communities around the county and the region, and we're not just in Harris County, we're throughout this region. But it is hard to get that word out. And everybody, I was glad to see people raise their hands. They're willing to do an hour a week, because I guess that in most people, they want to do something when it's convenient, but they don't really, they're worried about their kid getting homework, and they're worried about the traffic, and they're worried about everything else, and it has to be easy. The Emergency Response Team is a program that's designed to give you some basic training and then make it easy for you as a neighborhood to come together to respond, or a workplace to come together and respond to a disaster in your local community.
So if Noe wants to sign up for Citizen Corps,
that's right, and there's a brochure,
what should
and look,
he
the
do?
major here, Ed.
Let me add something to that. Right after 9/11, I was over the communication system at the time for the Sheriff's Department. We were so swamped with clues and calls that everybody started had a suspicion of every neighbor that they didn't know very well. One guy had a couple of 100 pounds of rice in his garage, and I don't know why he had a couple of 100 pounds of rice. But this lady was convinced that was some kind of media to grow biological terror weapons. And we tried to respond and did respond. Sometimes the timeline was a little longer than we'd liked because we were swamped. I think the city was probably the same way. Well, that was good, and we didn't want to turn anybody off, but people didn't know their neighbors. They didn't know what was going on in their neighborhood. They didn't know what was suspicious. People were getting calls. This pipeline's exposed on the top. It's where they measure the thing. It's been exposed ever since they put it in. That's the first time the lady had noticed it in her backyard, 50 feet from her house. Okay. Well, we were all more aware, and I don't want to make fun of that, but if we become aware in advance so that we truly know what is unusual, then we can have better response.
Let me
HarrisCountyCitizensCorps.com.
Okay, HarrisCountyCitizenCorps.com.
For those on the radio here, HarrisCountyCitizenCorps.com.
Okay, I want everybody to hear that, so you can do that. We've just got a couple of minutes before the radio audience is going to leave us, but we'll stay for a few more minutes after that and hear some more concerns. But let me just go very quickly down the panel and ask each one of you very briefly, because we have a short time, to tell us what you've learned today. Is there anything that you've heard today that you didn't know before you came? Judge Kimber.
Communications, again, is the key. Always information and communication, and that feedback is, we need it, and we'll keep working on it.
Dr. Palacio.
Things that I didn't know. I actually didn't know about the school grant, and we have been working with the schools in several different arenas, and I think the opportunity to strengthen that relationship is something that I gleaned.
That's great. Undersecretary Hutchinson, did you learn anything today?
I've learned some tremendous things to be done in Houston and Harris County, particularly the volunteers that are here that are really willing to sign up. We have Ready.gov, the Citizens Corps, really two initiatives that we want to be pushed out there for citizen involvement. There's things that everybody can do, and that's encouraging to see the response.
Judge Eccles.
I think that the key here is that no matter how good a job we think we're doing, there's people we don't reach. And the Civil Air Patrol or the neighborhood out by the Astrodome or the other folks in the community, we need to redouble our efforts to continue to get that word out. Great partners with the JP, but the problem we have at the radio station with KTRH is the personnel change there and our personnel change. And we know each other. We'll show up for the storm, but the guy and the producer may not know the guy from our emergency management office. We need to keep those communication lines open to continue to do more than any one of us could do on our own.
Well, there's a lot of goodwill here, so I think you can. Major Smith?
Exactly what the judge was saying. I believe, although we're reaching out to groups we've never reached out to before, obviously we need to continue that effort to make sure nobody gets left out, because this is about all of us. We're also citizens. We're not just first responders.
Donna Morea, from the perspective of the private sector and as a citizen.
Well, I think I'll answer from the perspective of a citizen, because it's been really interesting for me to listen to this today. And I would say that I am actually very, very encouraged by what I heard. What I heard was that governments are working together better than ever, regionally, across levels of government, from state and local to the federal government, across functional areas, from police to fire to health to public safety, all across. We've seen tremendous progress. And most of that progress has been through simple means: collaborating, communicating, cooperating, and working together. Now, I also heard a gap, and the gap is that we have to reach more broadly, now beyond government, to the schools and the people. But I think if we apply
and the workplace. Excuse me, because we're going to have to say goodbye to our radio audience, but I want to say to everyone that if you'd like to continue this conversation online, come to our website, www.excelgov.org. That's excelgov.org. And thank you very much for joining us. Okay, well, let's, first of all, you finish.
Well,
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
There's something about this thing in your ear that you have to listen to.
I guess my takeaway, though, is that if we could make that progress this well and this quickly within government and between government and the private sector so far with really relatively straightforward kinds of tools, then we should be able to kind of reach the next stage and work more broadly with the communities.
We can reach a lot of people through workplaces and schools. There's no question about it. Let me ask you for a few comments on what you learned today. Did you learn anything? Did you hear anything that you didn't know before? Anybody? Stand up. There's a microphone over there for you, and just introduce yourself.
I'm Marie Warung, and I learned a lot about just what's in place. An observation that I had was that besides pushing out information and putting out websites, it seems, in my own personal experience, and that may be true of other people, that unless there's an imminent threat, the security level goes up. It was a year or so ago when that Home Depots and all the home stores were running out of tape and plastic, and because there was something we were all crazy about, and we all downloaded the lists of what to do. But unless there's something that's really there, I imagine that many of us don't think about it. It hasn't been incorporated as a way of life, which sadly it may need to be now. So what's the emergency plan at home? What do you do if, we're looking to the entities out there and trusting that when there's something that happens, they'll let us know, and we'll hopefully have what we need to follow instructions and act on it. So it's a matter of taking ownership and saying, okay, they've got those resources out there, and I need to look and be a partner, not just wait for all the local and state and federal and so on agencies to have their act together, but also be responsible for knowing what's available and being prepared.
How many of you have family plans? How many of you? Raise your hands high. Okay. Some people don't, my goodness. But many of you do have family plans, and there are some great resources available. The Red Cross has been a wonderful partner, the American Red Cross of the Department of Homeland Security, in getting clear, simple information about what you can do. One more comment about what you've heard and learned today, please.
I'd like to thank you all for doing your job, and one thing I did learn is why a lot of times I go to the airport and I'm distracted by all these new security controls. I did learn that we caught 30 guys. That's good news. So thank you for that. The one thing that I also seen a strong absence of, I'm in the private sector, and I saw a strong absence of really private sector response here. In other words, an empty seat, I'll just point to it. No offense to the young lady, but I'm talking about somebody really representing, like for the InfraGuard, for instance, that communication of the private sector with you guys. And also, I really worried about how we handle our cyber crime. I don't think that the government yet has even grasped. I mean, these kids that are doing this stuff to us, and they're attacking us, and the terrorists will follow up with that. The laws don't even represent it. And what are we going to do to stop these guys? Because we understand physical crime, we understand physical problems, we understand stopping that guy from bombing something or other, but we have no clue of how they're going to attack our infrastructure and really stop them.
A lot more to do, and you can help us with your suggestions. Thank you all very much. Especially thank you for being here and conveying this important message of your concerns, how you want to be involved, and your ideas about what we can do. I want to say special thanks to Ambassador Dirijian and the Baker Institute and Rice University for hosting us. I want to say very special thanks to KTRH News Radio and to our very distinguished panel. Asa Hutchinson, thank you for coming from Washington to be with us. Thank all of you. This conversation will be continued around the table.